Anyway, yamu akwa AdomTV so na braso say the big agenda. Yede ebremu na ene ye ba benyanto wase ahwe His Excellency John Dramani Mahama Ghana Mampani ne speech anana no dey somebody akotudwa ewo United Nations General Assembly 80th session no na ensem de Mampani aburu bi so papa wachre say the future is African na slave trade so yen classify no as the biggest anase mpukura no ade a enye kura ya ye edi etia nipa dasani anase adasa ewo atiasefo asase so na nuoma ye nananom nuoma ye japade a abrofo enam sa nkoato ene nkoaso dwumadie ne so ebehwie firi o man mu nyina no hwe no mfa yade emfa emaye nsam a omampani broso no ebenyanto wase ehururem okan ya koka Gaza mpapre no so apotwe a eda Israel for ne Palestinian for ntem se wiase nyina nsekere enka no kore no se ade a ekoso no enye ade a Israel for ye no enye na yebenyanto wase na ya bobɔ nsɛm no so kakrakra ne adi ho nkomo ensɛm ni bi o mampani kan ya sɛbi mpreduasa bi mampani fododo na no sɛbi bɛhwɛ omotro enya de ombetimi aka wasekere aka na wasekere kan pempempen sei akire bro ni fitaa so aya na wonsunsanso bi de ma wo ne wo man anase ho asɛm te sɛ de obi kan sɛ freedom of speech de betimi guarantee ne freedom after speech no na ya na ho asɛm but it's about time say Africa be bold te sɛ de bre bi atwamu na ye akanifo etie anase bekoso a na yammo ho sekrama yetwa ne to no aka ne dua hye nantem e wa abrofo no anim efrem na na sei ampofo je big agenda ne yentwe ho emra sisia yamu akwa babiem edi aba big agenda so braso si di nkomo na mayenko na United Nations General Assembly 80th session ene Ghana Mampani His Excellency John Dramani Mahama enya kwanya kasa ne nsɛm odi to dwane yenkotie kakra na yemra me biebie nsɛm num.
In 1995, during the 50th anniversary of the United Nations, Nelson Mandela stood in this very spot. And he said, the United Nations has to reassess its role, redefine its profile, and reshape its structures. It should truly reflect the diversity of our universe and ensure equity among the nations in the exercise of power within the system of international relations in general, and the Security Council in particular. I close quotations. 30 years later, we African leaders are still making the same simple request for a permanent seat on the Security Council with the power of a veto. So today, Madam President, I stand here in this exact spot and ask the world, if not now, then when? We demand not only a reform of the Security Council, but also a reset of the global financial architecture, which is currently rigged against Africa. Africa must have a greater say in the world's multilateral financial institutions. And while I'm making requests, I'd like to call for the removal of the blockade on Cuba. As Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, our nation's founder, famously said, we seek to be friends with all and enemies to none. The Cuban people shed their blood on African soil in the fight against apartheid. And indeed, Cuba has been and continues to be a faithful friend of Africa. You see, the very fact that I can stand here and ask these things and say these things, and the fact that all nations can ostensibly gather here to address critical global issues, air our grievances, and express our concerns, that is what makes the survival of this organization so important. The denial of visas to President Abbas and the Palestinian delegation sets a bad precedent and should be deeply worrying to all member nations of the United Nations. Ghana recognized the state of Palestine in 1988 and supported a two-state solution to the conflict since then. And I say, contrary to the claims of some, a two-state solution would not be a reward for Hamas. It would rather be a reprieve for the hundreds of thousands of innocent women and children and people who are facing collective punishment and forced starvation for no reason other than the fact that they are Palestinian. For nearly 2 years and for the fear of reprisals, we here in this General Assembly have been playing hide and seek with language to find the right words to help us avoid or excuse what we all know is taking place in Gaza. But here's the thing, it doesn't matter what you call it. If it looks like a duck, it swims like a duck and quacks like a duck, well, then it must be a duck. The crimes in Gaza must stop.
Eti Ghana Mampeni Excellency John Dramani Mahama ena ose se aboa no odware te se dabo okwan te se dabo na ne ye te se dabo dia ene ye dabo nti de ye hwe ho brofo akese ye pe ho nkyiremu na ye de atopono so akire se no na ekoso wo Gaza mpapre ne so no enokure na e ba akopɛ bi aka ne empese ye beka na the most serious and heaviest crime committed against humanity is slave trade. Afei, amanya wono sebi wonsa so achi mako enum acheso mo ene wotumi di kire bibia yenye ewo eye United Nations ne so ebra so se ebiman enso enya tenabia ewo sa ekonwa koro anase pono koro na so nsem de se de mekan no wabro bebre so Dr. Yamreku international relations expert amama ntem nkita hodie emunim de opani wo bi pa yenhwe ensem a opani agina paso ne akukudrom abroso ezunsanso e woso ede ma omen Ghana na ebiman enyina no etise doc enwere yem wadwum akwa baba AdomTV so. Hello doctor na bokode.
Hello.
Oh doc ahoma no ate ye bohoden se yensa ebeka doctor biem na ensem no etoda bia Africa must be bold and fearless said ye etoda bia na se eja ye share master for na yensa gugu yechi na asema o se ye kan ye de wada kame ye se no mampani asechire ensem no pi aka enso kwa bakosem a ebimampani ofo a na asechire no kure se ye kachara brofo pese chira brofo se yenyina ye nipa ba ko mugya ne we nyina mu yenyina no sebe mpreduasa yakwa ye ni mo yeyiye no ne ho keka ho sa afo no abrofo no ma anya adwen ada ti duru ba bi no behwe no na wono mo nam kontuna se nam kwan bi so epese sa amampanimfo no oyi wo moto atwede wo de doctor ya wa mankwa ba doc me mo akwa ba bi mu
Yeah.
Dr. Yamreku Adama utie omampani speech and newo the 80th session of the United Nations General Assembly no.
Papa ye na mani dia chepa.
All right. Enti se o bo no tofa ne nsem no kan no minim brofo anatwi kasa wo de beto so se good, se excellent, se poor. Say na wo beka no.
Eza opo beza me Michael omampani kasa o kan no.
Ai.
Well, the meeting I can found say he gave Ghana global presence without saying he said his score no A or B, and I said B minus no. I think that he did a very good job. In my opinion, I think that he represented the interest of Ghana and the African continent very well. And it doesn't come to me as a surprise if you say Omampani Otigaso Omampani Mahama. Why be that? 9 years ago, the 71st session of United Nations General Assembly meetings now, Okokasa, you know, just with Kasa. And I'm saying now, can so a ball my name, a Biblium Hamputu. Wouldn't say before some Kasa said, Mekau Assembly, Africa CDC, Africa member state on CDC, on the sidelines of Ongano, they designated him to chair CDC Africa meeting via Obu Person Moya because of Omampani initiative be a friend of Accra Compact and Accra Reset meeting. They let him chair that sideline meeting. He spoke to what you call restructuring global governance and public health equity. And it means that Omampani you know, he has gravitas. You know, he gives Ghana global presence. And I was showing some now Kankana. You know, he is seeking a counter narrative to the friend of isolationist rhetorics now, a defining international politics. And I don't care what happens to any other people but myself. He is offering a counter narrative to that and saying, it is good. Africa needs to be self-reliant, but it shouldn't come at the expense of multilateralism, and I say globalism. Into we share in Yamana or Kana, or share some or Kana, just a CSA and maybe a big boy, you will be a big brave and the Ghana in particular. He's talking about restructuring United Nations. He said, United Nations is a member state community of how many countries? But in the 5 Security Council, like I said, into a tyranny of the minority. In the customer because of the veto power, no, 140 members meeting like I say, so 5 no back in Iowa. I think some best some but some way these conversations must be held. And that is what he is doing. It might seem like an overbeaten drum, but he is repeating that narrative. So look, as a United Nations, African states, we must be able to be permanently represented in Security Council. In realism, in international relations, it looks as if it's a utopian, an unrealistic thought, but a something that must happen. I'm not called climate change. So yeah, President Donald Trump is some of the kind. I know that he always believes that climate change a hoax. Nuclear he said there is a gas emission somewhere. Say, my mind, and mine. And and climate change now so climate change has very devastating consequences on countries like global South Africa count. And so also like we emit we have the fewer gas emissions contribute to global warming. So she also be a prepare. In the and maybe President Trump America President Mahama is offering a counter narrative to Sanyama. He touched on climate change, he touched on restructuring the UN system, but he also touched on reparations. Said through the decades of decades of colonialism, decades of enslavement, has dilapidated Africa's economies. And how Europe underdeveloped, Africa. They have to pay some reparations.
Yeah.
Yes. Or touch on the fact that we need sovereignty over our natural resources. And maybe sign natural resources, those are almost society resources coin. They say you have a sign those are we make sure say we benefit more than resources. No?
Yeah.
And then it is hard time we added some value to our natural resources. So it benefits us more than that S-4 relationship now. Not global, not how do you call it? Planners on our resources. And to hear some kind, to me, he gave Ghana, a diplomatic presence on the international stage. And he was talking of how Ghana they've been very beneficial, instrumentally beneficial to the war. Upon some of these big people with Ghanaian, ancestry. And I think Ghana, we've all, and even he talked about a two-state solution, Ghana and I think Ghana has a diplomatic presence. And but we always punch above our weight when it comes to diplomatic issues, and we have a reputation for certain things in diplomacy. And I think this was one of the moments we left a footprint.
Okay.
In terms of
Doc, the Yabo Bosui no we see na a bold and courageous statements and no kre any asechere ne aka kira brofo na sebe one matena yeso ache wanamuntuo decisions no mo ne ho nkeka ho, but robbing the truth in the face of this superpowers said ye tie e kanu no eya na esunsun sanso e frechire ba no eti say
as I said, United Nations body na ete. These are some of the reasons in ete.
No correct.
Said if you look at Article 2, Paragraph 1 of the UN Charter now, it talks about sovereignty and equality of all member states. These are some of the reasons they are saying. You said they are in theory by its idealist ethos. Maybe I said, "Oh, mind be asking me feel free as person." And you say, "Engineers say sisters, and I can't say I am kind of correct." Oh, wow! And if I be now, I say, "I'm correct."
Matthias, it's not about you no correct. Kano, you know, you say international diplomacy, ne sa international politics here now can one say me. Abrofo no munim de omo ye pa. Enti sometimes if an African rises na or start say or punch omo in the face with the truther, eto da bia na omo so afo mo ho adwen de tia sa ama no sa nkomo no na me pese ubie so kakra kire say eba ni say ya et say ana we are at a stage afei wo kan okra nkyerɛ mo a ombeji in good faith.
Mame fan free ha nyama mi.
Yeah, just about 2 minutes in it. I am not about to tell mame.
Mame money tougher. I think say you see our sovereign international system now. I think say people are moving away from political correctness. We have seen that reversal in what we call the international rule-based order, and as a deliberate international system. People are moving away from political correctness. People want to be told the truth. And even we have seen how and Donald Trump, Europe, Germany, from AFD, or the alternate Joint Party, in Poland, in Hungary, people want to speak the truth and they want to tell the truth. I understand that there are consequences because at the end of the day, we have our hand in their mouth. But these are some of the very few avenues and I don't think that it will compromise our relationship with, for instance, U.S. because we are taking a stance against. We are not taking a stance. The data is there. The United Nations says that what Israel is doing in Gaza tantamount to genocide. And if Ghana takes a position now, it does not rupture any relationship with the U.S. because there are other pressing issues. It will unite U.S. and Ghana than Ghana recognizing a two-state solution in Palestine. Who himself no say Ghana takes a stand. So at the same time, in Ghana, in the U.S. assigns a MOU. West African deported migrants. And you say, I think even though it is not written, there is a reason why Ghana is doing that. Not direct financial benefit, right? But probably in my mindset, so that Ghana you will be exonerated from some of these harsh policies, Trump administration. Okay. So I don't think speaking the truth, is going to rupture,
especially taking into consideration the retaliatory nature of American president, some of these leaders,
And like I said, the things that unite U.S. and Ghana, they move beyond Ghana's recognition of two-state solution.
All right. Doc, Mame na wase ye brena so ye da se pass oje brena e breka kre wetin be bie niam so a kire em say afei na speech na to bia nti be nyanto wase as the day goes by no and our days goes by no na ye nyanto wase biem na ye di nkomo a ese efata Dr. Yaomreku ye international relations expert na to say ye ni di nkomo no omapani ensam odi to dwane de emu pi emu odu ye bekoso a edi ehon nkomo e fe na na say yampofo je nyame admadwa de be se hye biem.